I guess it's kind of a cliche at this point for commentary YouTubers to have tried drugs. I sometimes wonder if they do it because they ran out of stories and they're always trying to outdo themselves, so they say yes when their friends offer them stuff. Ooh, if I take this Molly, then I can totally tell a story on my YouTube channel. I've had similar thoughts before about things, but never about drugs. Growing up a Jehovah's Witness made substances a huge no for me. I didn't try alcohol until the middle of my 21st year. I tried cannabis when I was 22, and only because my friends offered it to me all the time. After telling them no for a year and researching it to make sure they were safe, I ended up finding a lot of evidence that weed isn't very harmful, and I decided to try it and see what it was like. Never in my life did I think I'd ever be inclined to try psychedelics. I didn't know anything about them other than what I've heard about LSD. Makes you go crazy, thinks you can fly. Ooh, what an appealing window. Yeah, that was good enough for me. Top tier research on my part, but one day a friend of mine started telling me about mushrooms and how they changed his life. He said he'd become more self-reflective, more open-minded. It showed him ways of thinking that he'd only thought possible by scholars and philosophers, which made me scoff. Drugs don't make you smarter, and that was the conclusion I drew in my head. But after some time in research, I ended up finding the same things about psychedelics as I'd found about cannabis. The compounds are harmless to your body, non-addictive, and many who use them reported the experiences as one of the most important days of their life, which got me curious. If I take these mushrooms, then maybe I can tell the story on my YouTube channel. Now, before I continue, I do have to say that I don't endorse drugs, blah-de-blah, YouTube's a tool, please demonetize me for this harmless story. So there I am with a group of friends and we're going to try the mushrooms. I'd written a list of things that I wanted to ask my higher consciousness self. Things like, are you taking anyone for granted? How can you help your brother? What can I do to better my life? How can I live to the fullest? I wanted to make sure that I did this right. Apparently, if you take mushrooms like a drug, it causes them to treat you poorly, gives you bad trips. If you take them as a way to learn and grow, then they apparently have things that they can show you. So it's about 20 minutes into the experience and I start to feel a bit strange. The come-up felt like my entire body was vibrating, but it felt so comfortable. I remember feeling very light as well. I'd stand up and walk around, but I didn't feel like I had a body at all, just a floating head, which was very weird. About an hour goes by and I pick up a balloon. We'd gotten balloons and glow sticks for the occasion, and on the surface of the balloon were these kaleidoscopic geometric patterns that continued to swirl and twist around the balloon. Sometimes they'd just be patterns of triangular shapes, and then they'd morph into Asian symbols and letters, then to Egyptian hieroglyphs, and then some other language. It felt like it was alive, and everything I picked up was like that. It was as though I would give life to things as I held them, and everything was incredibly beautiful. Now, it's about 9 o'clock. It was dark outside, unfortunately, but I did still go outside and look at the trees. The way they moved was majestic. It was kind of like they were growing, but staying the same height at the same time. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but it was beautiful. Now, this story is kind of going to be all over the place. When you're on mushrooms, time doesn't feel like it normally does. You only live in moments, and sometimes they feel like forever, and sometimes they're just very quick. But so much happens in each of these moments. I was staring into the night sky, and the stars started to look fake. It was as though the night sky was a giant screen, and I could see the ambient occlusion behind the stars. Clouds would form into these crystalline shapes and form stories right in front of me. There was a point that this cloud turned into a giant pop-up storybook, and I could turn the pages in my mind. While all this is going on, by the way, I have 3 other friends who are also tripping on shrooms. One of them is having a great time, much like myself, while the other had taken such a small dose that it barely hit him. But his girlfriend was flying. She's screaming and laughing and crying. She told us she saw a dancing rainbow elephant on the ceiling. She said that when she cracked the glow sticks, the colors would shoot across the room. She was definitely somewhere else. And no offense to her, but sometimes it was too much to handle. So I decided to go into the bathroom. This is where things got really strange for me. So there I am in the bathroom doing my dirty work when I go to wash my hands. I look in the mirror and my reflection is hideous. My face was gray, my teeth were all janked up, my eyes are sunken in, my face looks skinny as hell. It was not a pretty sight. I remember turning away from the mirror with a subtle, "Oh, what the hell?" I just didn't want to look. It made me wonder if that's what I really looked like, as I couldn't remember what my face normally looked like at the time. After a few seconds of looking down, though, I thought to myself, you know what? Screw it, and I looked back up. After looking for maybe a few seconds, I started laughing and said out loud, "Screw that! That's not me, and even if it is, I don't care. My heart, my brain, these are me, and I like myself." I walked out of the bathroom with the biggest smile on my face. I'd never reflected on myself like that before, and that event showed me that all the power in the world is within me. Happiness, sadness, fulfillment, judgment, it's all me, and the way I decide to look at the world will make me happy. Not how pretty I am or how many nice things I have, which of course is something you hear all the time, but to know a thing and to understand a thing are two totally different things. While I was in the bathroom, I took that list of questions from earlier and I read it to myself. It took me 3 seconds of looking that thing over and I threw it away. Are you taking anyone for granted? What can I do better in my life? Come on, Barry, ask some better damn questions, you friggin' idiot. If you can't tell that you're taking people for granted, then that's the problem you gotta work on. It's not hard, just be a better person. For whatever reason, I thought mushrooms would just instantly solve everything. Instead, what they do is show you what you're doing wrong and how you could solve it. But you have to be the one who wants to change and make those efforts. There's no quick fix, which is a funny slap in my lazy face. I looked at myself in the mirror some more and I turned into a video game character of sorts. My face went back to normal, but I had control over what I looked like to an extent. I could change my eye color, I turned them purple, then silver, then red. I made my hair blonde and then black. I could adjust my height and weight to an extent. It was incredible what my brain was capable of. I'd never imagined being able to do something like that before. I carried on my happy tripping with my friends until we all started coming down. Our trip sitters brought out papers and colored pencils for all of us to draw, and then my friend brought out the bong. Dun dun dun! Let's smoke weed! Now for those of you who don't know, and I didn't know at this point, cannabis enhances the effects of psychedelics. So if you're starting to come down, you can smoke weed and go right back up. My friend tells us this, so we all start taking hits. I took 2 really big hits, and the second I did that, things got a little terrifying. So I'm sitting in the chair completely still. I didn't realize it, but I'd stopped moving completely. It was almost as if I'd been tranquilized. Once I realized that, I started to struggle. I was trying my absolute hardest to move. Doing this only made things worse. From the corner of the room, this darkness started to fill in. It absorbed everything. I couldn't see my friends who were right in front of my face. I couldn't hear them either. This loud static noise had entered my ears, and it was louder than everything else in the room. Now, the darkness couldn't take the light that was on, and we were in the middle of the room, so I could still kind of see my friends' faces. Other than that, it was black, and inside I was freaking out. Oh my god, I did this to myself. I perma-fried myself. My mother's gonna have to hear about this, and for the rest of my life, I'm gonna be a vegetable because I wanted to try this stuff. I was freaking out hard, and it seemed like forever, but it only really went on for about 30 seconds at this point. This is when I used all the strength that I could muster, and I turned my eyes to look at one of my friends, trying to give some sort of signal that I was not okay. She turns, looks at me, turns away, and then goes back to drawing. This sent me over the edge. I was locked in place, scared to death, thinking the worst, thinking that for the rest of my life, this was going to be my position. That's when I remembered that I'd smoked weed. I took a breath and started talking to myself. Okay, Barry, chill out. It's only been a minute. Your friends are right next to you. Eventually, one of them is going to realize that you're not here. Just go with this and stop fighting it. That's what everyone says is the worst thing you can do. Right after that, the piercing static in my head went away. The room came back and I could see everything again. I still couldn't move, but my body was in a state of total peace. I was incredibly relaxed and there was absolutely nothing in my head. It was complete bliss. This is when I realized that everything was fine. It had been fine the whole time, and me being in my head, worrying about things, is the only problem that I actually had. I told myself that I was a vegetable. I told myself that this was bad, but had I just let things be and went with the flow, it would have been fine. It was at this point that my friends started noticing that I was gone, and had been calling my name. I looked up with some tears in my eyes and told them that I'd been stuck, that I hadn't been able to move. I told them about what happened to me, and they found it terrifying, but at that point, it didn't seem like that to me anymore. I was so profoundly amazed that my brain was capable of doing something like that. Just a minute, but my brain created a sound and amplified it over everything. It made everything in the room so dark that I couldn't see. I had no idea it could just do something like that, and it taught me not to think so negatively and not to be in my head all the time. The next day, everything was beautiful. Colors still popped, and I felt like I thought differently. I looked at the world differently. I went to a Taco Bell and had epiphanies about corporation, greed, ego, and how we're all affected by our culture in ways we don't even realize. It made me feel like I saw the world clearer than I ever had before. Like someone put goggles on me as a child and the mushrooms ripped them off and made me see the world the way it really is. Now again, this isn't me trying to tell you to go out and try mushrooms. Psychedelics are absolutely not for everyone, but I wanted to share my story. I don't think it's very fair that the media only talks about the negative aspects of these things, especially with how profoundly they've changed my life and the way that I think. I used to worry about money and not being fulfilled and impressing everyone around me, and now I only really care about having an awesome life no matter how much money I have. Happiness isn't in stuff, and no matter how many times some Disney movie told me that, it never hit me the same way these psychedelic experiences have. However, this is not the last time that I took a psychedelic, and if you guys like this story, perhaps I'll tell you the story about me trying LSD. That one's not as pleasant. Either way, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.